afternoon. Very quite good afternoon. Post lunch. Good afternoon once again. Bas. No Josh. Okay, great. Thank you. I think I don't need to introduce once again. Already, yeah, it's there on the screen. So I have two challenges. One is, of course, post lunch. The other challenge is we have a great, I can say, very experienced panel. If I just leave it to even one of them, right? I think they can talk whole rest of the whole session. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly set the context around the topic. It's very interesting and it's very close to my heart. The whole cyber risk in this whole changing landscape, we all understand. And if you look at this panel, in fact, very diverse, very experienced and from diverse industries. We have quick commerce, we have fintech, we have banking, we have ad tech. Of course, I come from it's ed tech, and I come from ad tech. So I think tech is the whole, I can say the fulcrum today. Every enterprise, small, medium, large, it's all embracing tech. Technology is at its best. So while every enterprise is embracing the whole technology, I normally talk in most of my sessions like the whole SMAC stack is being embraced. Social, mobile, analytics, cloud. But the other challenge is, of course, how do we ensure that this tech is not exploited? So the whole discussion is around cyber risk. And of course, I know cyber risk is a very broad, we can keep talking at length and breadth on various areas, but we'll just limit our discussion around data protection. How today, of course, each of these enterprises, startups or medium, large, it's all around data. Data is at the center stage. And threat actors are definitely behind data. So today, in fact, I was just reading yesterday only, I think, as latest as possible, certain published one report on, means while we can talk about a lot of great numbers, I don't want to throw numbers around, but even India, in fact, ransomware, right? Ransomware is one of the key, so how threat actors are behind data. And in fact, even Indian companies, we saw a lot of companies grappling with this. One of the biggest menace, ransomware attacks, is on the rise. So we'll just have a discussion around this. And then, so first I would like to open to my panelist, maybe whoever would like to start. Of course, quickly introduce yourself and what exactly are the challenges you see, right, in your enterprise around this whole theme, what we're talking. And of course, the discussion is also, as she's called out, about the internal, external factors. So perimeter, for me as such, the perimeter is, there's nothing called perimeter. I think it's a very thin line today, internal, external, because especially after COVID, the whole perimeter has itself has vanished. I know we all traditionally, we used to draw a perimeter and say, okay, an employee comes into the organization, he logs into the corporate network. In fact, that whole perimeter itself has faded away now. So in this context, of course, I think COVID definitely, it has, no doubt, it has fastened digital transformation and for many companies, but equally a lot of risks, because today, for most of us, in fact, every employee home, right, is an perimeter. I can say the perimeter got extended to that extent. So in that context, maybe I'll just start from my last, maybe Sanil, right? From there, and we'll come quickly, maybe Sanil and each of the panelists quickly introduce and talk about, we'll not talk too much challenges because we'll make it brief, otherwise we'll keep on talking challenges, because finally I want to come to the end to the expert from Commvault who can talk about how can enterprises basically secure their whole environment towards data protection.
Absolutely. Say hi. Good afternoon. Sanil here. So I head the cybersecurity for Byju's group. So as you said, firstly, the internal and external perimeter is melting, right? So you don't see, with the current scale that we have, right? A lot of employees are working from home. There is a lot of BYOD, influx of BYOD systems, plus cloud, plus apps, plus vendors, a huge ecosystem, right? 4,000 to 5,000 vendors. So what happens is, there is nothing called as perimeter, right?
Absolutely.
So we see it as one network, and how do we protect the network is something that we are solving as we speak, because the organization is scaling inorganically, so to call, right? So we constantly are grappling with how do you secure the entire, so to call, the entire network, right? End-to-end networks, including the endpoints, the applications, the data backups, the cloud, the apps, the code, including the vendors and including all the ecosystems, right? And the challenges are quite, a lot of them, because what happens is, you have on one side, the business which is demanding, right, a lot. Every single day, we need to pass on new business challenges, the business is growing, and the new tech that comes into play, right? Every engineering team would be experimenting with new tech. It could be Terraform, or it could be multiple other platforms, right? So the network is something that we are bothered, and we are trying to implement zero trust, right? Which is basically trying to build the basic blocks in place and then try to have kind of one unified network where basically you try to authenticate, authorize, contextual based security, and then have all the other frills around ensuring, you have, we have complete visibility. So that's what we are trying to build.
Great,
Thank you.
Thanks, Anil. Yash, in fact, Yash is very uniquely positioned, I can say.
Yeah.
He's one.
Between the security.
Exactly, because he manages tech.
Yeah, I've never felt so secure in my life. Yeah, so I think I'll just reiterate a very old adage, right? So when you look at a chain, right, the chain is as strong as the weakest link, and I think that applies very well to security. When you're looking at security from a corporation perspective or an organization perspective, you have to look at it in a very holistic manner. And what you will also find is that you have to kind of go and identify what are the potential weak spots that are there, and some of those may not be actually very, very obvious to you as well. So let's say there's a company who's actually ensured that there's firewall protection, there's good protection on the internal and external perimeters, but maybe they did not put a lot of focus on employee username and passwords, right? And if an employee is kind of reusing the same username and password that they was using somewhere else, then that actually leads to another vulnerability that's there, and that's something that can be exploited. So it's very, very important to, so when you're looking at security, have a holistic view, and also keep an eye out on where are your weakest, which are places which are easily exploitable, and not only through the traditional hackers where we have malicious users trying to breach or trying to find weaknesses in your system, but also look at social angles, social hacking angles, etc. So it's important to look at it from a holistic perspective.
Great, thanks, Yash. Navaneethan, you come from a very interesting space again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can say heavily targeted or...
may not be. Amazing. Very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's absolutely my pleasure in sharing my thought and, of course, learning from everyone. Moreover, just we have come across a lot of PFS sectors because that's a way money on the wire, right? Anytime if you tap the wire, you can take out the money. So that standpoint where we have a lot of opportunity, at the same time a lot of the vulnerabilities also lying on the the PFS sectors. So coming to the perimeter, just what are the perimeter where we're talking? Of course, if you see this 20 years before, where we had a man trap concept, like before getting to the server room, like where the first door opens you put the fingerprint, then the first door will close, then only the second door opens, right? So that's why we wanted to ensure that who is ensuring to the data centers, it's the right persons, and then apart from this respective persons, nobody can get in, right? That's a man trap concepts we have it 20 years back. Now our entire data itself lying on the cloud. 10 years back where we have a doubt whether we should move our data to the cloud or not. Second one is what kind of data we can move, whether it is operational or the sensitive one. Now what are the organization is born now, it's all the data. If you take 103 the unicorn, or maybe on top of that, all the startups, whatever we have it in India, all the folks, they starting business from the, the cloud, right? That's no other options like whether we can go, because that's scalability, and then in terms of native cloud option is also, it is wide. If you want to plug in, where we can plug in and then start moving on that. So coming to the threat landscapes, of course, technology and then usability is really gone up, and usability is also gone up. So let us take, maybe if you want to have any sales, maybe in morning 9 to evening 4, you can scale up your cloud infrastructure. Maybe during night, instead of 1,000, maybe you can run on the entire system with the 1 nodes, right? So absolutely scalability is possible. But at the same time, in terms of security, all data is lying on the cloud. So there is a misconception, right? Once it is a cloud, means the people will think it has been taken by the CSP, cloud service provider, but it's not the case. The first foremost myth and misconception is, like, we have to understand it's on the what kind of service, whether it is a SaaS, PaaS, or IaaS, and who will be holding accountability at what level. That's the first one. Second one is, as rightly Yash just mentioned, it is a holistic view, right? Earlier, if you see, where the people don't have a time to focus on their own set of organization. Now, really, as a CISOs and then CIO, really we have to focus not only on your company, who are all the service provider, who are all the vendor. Really, we have to ensure that their data, their assets also is protected in well manner, equivalent to our infrastructure. Because that is the foremost one which is happening in the current, like, whatever it is happening in the US as well as couple of other entities, which we don't want to name it. And that's why supply chain attack, it's play a very significant role. We may think they are pushing the patch. We may think they are providing the services. We may think, just we are getting evaluated on the respective aspects. But that's not the case, right? So if you're providing service to the customers, you may have a 10 box, in terms of onboarding, offboarding, and then vendor evaluations, or maybe the user evaluations, completing the KOC, all X, Y, right? But all the 10 box, it may not be made by you. You would have got something from the the third party. So really, we are not sure how the data flow happened within them, and then what has been taken care from the end to end. And the next interesting is, so earlier, if you see this, if you want to leak out the data, really we have to go on a data center, physical access to the servers, and then hard disk, right? Now, of course, since things are in the cloud, it's one API is more than enough. It's maybe the LinkedIn, or it's maybe Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, like all giants, right? All giants, we have amazing world-class security team. But still they got leaked out. How it went wrong is it's absolutely on the API. And because it's one API is more than enough, right? It looks like a genuine API. It's one API is more than enough to pull out all your PA information from the database. All the data leak, whatever you have seen, it's not in terms of KB and then maybe MB. It goes in the TB. So it's not of the bigger way, right? It is on the something which is losing inside actually. So that's why the API security, cloud security, of course, from the internal, external, on the holistic view, like not only the cyber security team, really we should ensure that responsibilities lies with each and everyone, including physical security, including who is doing cleaning, swiping, this entire flow. Because that's what the target went off, right? The target, I believe they are the one who opened the stories for the cyber security. It is a housekeeping guys, right? Housekeeping guys who is doing the AC maintenance. They thought AC maintenance, what they can do, but they have access to the data centers. So similarly, if you see that, the holistic approach from end to end, who are all entering to the organizations, because it may not be the cloud, right? But you have a switches, you have the firewall, which may connect to your SASE. So once you connect to your network, it may not require to have any other VPN, where you can have a complete access of your respective, the sources where you have it in cloud. So love to hear from other leaders.
Great, thanks, Navaneethan. Devam, maybe
Yeah,
because you come from a very unique space again, great learning, right? I'm sure born in the cloud, right?
Yes.
It's all, I think most of us are born in cloud.
Yeah. So basically, I am.
Yes. Audible.
Yeah, I am Devam Shah. I head the information security for Great Learning, and as correctly told by many of the leaders, like all of our assets are in the cloud, and nowadays if you see, then not only for the edtech company, but for any of the company, data is like we are generating data on daily basis, and not in KB, MB, it's in GB or sometimes in TBs or sometimes I have seen customers in previous organizations, they were generating like close to PB data on a daily basis. So this kind of data when we are generating, then we need to implement the security around that. And after the pandemic, there is no concept of perimeter. Everything became just hybrid environment where each of the home router becomes our perimeter. So maybe you have thousands of employees who are working from home, so all those thousands points will become your hybrid environment. And in this kind of scenario, we cannot have the strictly perimeter security, but we need to have some kind of solution which provides equivalent security based on the risk. So first of all, as a leader, what we need to do is identify the risk and what is the highest risky asset for you, what kind of category falls under the highest risk category, and let's focus there to secure that. Because as wisely said, like we cannot put $1 lakh this lock to protect data of $10. Right, so we need to first of all categorize all the assets. Once your assets are categorized, then according to the risk management, we need to prioritize and when to put the controls based on the risk assessment. That is one thing. Then we can reduce our work a lot, because if we try to implement the same control for all type of assets and for all the employees who are working home or sometimes from office, then we will actually burn out our energy. So that is one thing. The second thing is like now also if you read any of the survey of any CISO, CIO, then everyone is facing the challenge of resources. The top challenge is the resources. So after pandemic, other phase came, that is great resignation. And in the great resignation, the cost of resources increased like anything. And we cannot have very large team. So how we can overcome this solution, or how we can overcome this entire challenge where we need a lot of security people, but the resource cost is so much, we cannot have them. So what we do, we actually focus on the automation, and we trust the machine rather than trusting on the human side. So for an example, like building a SOC, Security Operations Center, rather than building a traditional SOC, what we do is we build the SOAR platform. So all the alerts are there and playbooks will be written against those alerts, and automatically the actions will be taken. So when we build this kind of platform, then we have less human error chances. Second, we require less human power because we can automate a lot of things. So my target is like, if I have one person, then I will ask the person to do job of 10 people of the normal organization. How one person can do that? If one is security engineer coming with a higher salary, coming with the higher cost, then thing is, okay, fine, you should at least have some knowledge of scripting and automation, and whatever you can write down, you should automate those things. So now the entire business cycle, everything is changing. We need to innovate ourselves. We cannot run our traditional model. And once we innovate, then we will be at the level when we can, like, even our resources are costlier, but if we are achieving 10x output or 20x output by automation, then yes, that is justifiable. So that is second thing. And third thing is, like, as these all the resources are having hybrid resources, the threat surface is really huge. And we need to continuously monitor the threat surface. Now how we can monitor this entire threat surface? That is very big challenge any CISO and CIOs are facing nowadays. So for that, we need to implement the zero trust. And once the zero trust is implemented, so zero trust initially when I started, like when I heard the zero trust 5-6 years back, it was more towards the network segmentation. But now entire zero trust concept moved from the network segmentation to the IDP. So we need to have some smart IDP where, based on the user's device compliance level, based on the user's location, based on multiple parameters, we should be able to identify whether this user should have this sensitive access or not. So yes, you can link it to the first step where I told about the risk management. You should have the proper risk management, then prioritization of asset, and according to that, these things should be defined.
Great. I think I need to stop, otherwise
Yes.
you go on. So let's go to Vanshit. You come from a neo-banking, very different area.
Nice to meet all the panelists and Thanks for putting up this conference. I am Vanshit, and I come from internet industry. I've been working in internet security for past 9 years. And one thing I have realized is that most organizations don't realize how the threat landscape is evolving with every minute and every hour passing by. And with cloud, the problem is they don't really understand the shared responsibility model. And 90% of the security issues that are going to come in the future are going to come from the landing zone setup when you're actually setting up your environment. For that per se, how you are connecting your VPCs, how you are doing micro-segmentation in your public and private subnets in those VPCs. And coming to the data protection part, I think people need to understand what are their crown jewels in terms of what data they really need to protect. Classify data in terms of PII and SPII, which is a big gap in many organizations that I come across. Secondly, Amazon Macy, which is a cloud native service, that's the only one I've used so far, acts as an excellent DLP in cloud. People should realize, protecting your cloud assets is one of the biggest challenges that are going to come in your cloud journey. And a recent example is, how attackers are able to gain access to your S3 buckets and host ransomwares by stealing your KMS keys, and then you lose access to your entire data. So those kind of threats are evolving every day. So I think that's the kind of threat landscape that organizations should more focus on, classify your data and prioritize your risk. And definitely zero trust is definitely the way ahead with the work from home and remote working model. So yeah.
Great. So Amit, now you come from 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, of course, and I think you heard each one of the panelists from their corporate view. And you, I'm sure you meet every day so many customers like us, right? Of course, predominantly in this space. So what is 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 exactly doing in this space and to mitigate the threats?
Sure, Satish. Good afternoon, everyone. My honor to be in front of you today. Excellent points put up by the panelists already. Before I jump into what 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 does, let me give you a little context of why and on what basis can we really put up some authentic information in front of you. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 has been in the space of data protection and data management for 25 years, right? We do the broadest workload coverage, cloud native SaaS applications, containers, VMs, databases, on-prem, hybrid, multi-cloud. We deliver ourselves as software, appliance, and SaaS, right? So we launched our SaaS offering called Metallic in 2019. In the last 2.5 years, we are already at $50 million ARR, right? So that's the kind of customer feedback and authentic response we are seeing. Now let me switch to the threat landscape and what 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 really has been seeing and how we are responding. It's a widely held belief today that it's not a matter of if, but when ransomware strikes you, right? All of us here are running our respective businesses, organizations. So it is really the approach needs to be taken from a lot of, our panelists mentioned zero trust. Nothing can be trusted, right? And that is what we have imbibed in our software layer, in our architecture. So let's take a quick journey through the time chronology of what a ransomware does. Clickbait or whatever other models it rides on enters your perimeter, right? It will at some point, right? Yes, put up defenses, but it's just a matter of when. And then there is a long fuse, right? Like how our Diwali patakas used to be, right? And then on one fine day, big bomb, right? Not big bang, which produced stuff. This annihilates everything, right, around it. The damage can manifest two different ways. Data loss, right? Brings down your systems, encrypts your data. But there's another aspect. Data exfiltration, leakage, sensitive customer data, your IP at an immense threat of being out there in the open, right? So different threat perceptions need different responses. That's what our observation, and that's how we are architecting our solutions as of today. So let me start from the point we usually see our customers come to us. The big bomb has happened, right? So their systems are down, manufacturing industries halting operations, right? HR, oh, we are not able to process payroll and whatnot, right? So the whole point is we are usually inside the customer's IT real estate. If their environment is being attacked, so are we. We run a distributed network of machines performing various operations. We have a footprint on our customers' assets, right? But of course, we have the opportunity to see and respond. But the fact remains, ransomware is so advanced these days that it gives backup vendors special treatment, right? So we have to build in, right, the defenses that we read about, we talk about. And that takes us into a multi-layered approach. And at the top of it is literally AAA zero trust, kind of approach that many of the panelists refer to. Simple things, two-factor authentication, the least privilege principle, right? Create shallow roles, narrower roles, right? Do not lose your privilege so easily. 4I principle, right? Bring in workflows, bring in authorization workflows, come lower down the architecture. Always use encryption. On the wire, data at rest, right? You have encryption keys, use a KMS to protect. Come down the pecking order. Data immutability, right? Ransomware cannot affect you if you have hardware logs, software logs. These days, cloud vendors also provide object logs. We, as a software provider, even if you have locally attached disks, right, on which our backup is really storing the data, our media agents, we have kernel level drivers, which have the finest level of control, that ensures that no unauthorized writes can happen to your data, right? We are responsible for that protection. Continue further, air gapping, right? Why do you think, tapes were so secure in one sense? Yes, there were impractical, aspects to it. But literally, right, what's the thing with ransomware, right? The thing with ransomware, it is intelligent. It's designed to move. It's designed to spread just like a virus, just like COVID, right? Morph itself, adapt. So the point is, you have to bring in that air gapping, which we have by virtue of our principles and software. So literally, there are blackout windows. When the blackout windows go down, right, our media agents come up. You can have network isolation. We bring up proxies. We bring up media agents. They are wired that no incoming connection happens to them. They are only designed to reach out to a specific entity, right? That entity pushes the data, operation done, short transaction, system down, right? So that's mimicking the security provided by tapes, right? So it's like, hard-earned learnings from the past do stick around, but you need to adapt and make them useful as per the context of the day, right? But the fact of the matter is, what our observation is, all of these are controls in our software. When customers purchase our software as software for their on-prem deployments, we all as implementers know that there are balances, trade-offs. You can bring in security, but sometimes that's at the cost of really the pressure on our limited IT resources anyways, which is where we have seen a lot of adoption on appliances, pre-hardened images, with a lot of these controls inbuilt, takes away a lot of hassles that your team has to really indulge in. Go a level further, come to DMAS, right? Data management as a service. We have limited footprint in your environment. We are covering your assets, and everything is in the cloud in a safe, secure perimeter maintained by us, implementing all the controls that we know are necessary to really foolproof your data. By virtue of that exercise, our Metallic software has recently gotten the FedRAMP high level of certification, which no other cloud vendor as of today has. Right, so at that point, I'll just pause, but that's what the summary is, right? You know, what's our vantage point as a data protector? Why do we get to see and associate with the pain that the customers have, and what's our learning, and how have we implemented that?
Great thought, Amit. Thanks. For a minute, I thought Amit is recommending us to go back to tapes, right? Anyway, it's interesting. I started my days with those old LTO tapes, offsite backup. Great. It took me back to the good old EDP days, right? Thanks, Amit. So I'll just, I know I'm just looking at the clock, so we'll just make it quick. Again, going back to the second quick round, maybe from Sanil. So basically, while I think each one of you spoke about challenges, solutions, and all that, especially for companies, tech-enabled companies, startups, and all. How do you convince your management about the security? Means the need for security, especially if you're not regulated. In the sense, if the regulation is not,
that's the fight that I'm fighting every day, right?
Because predominantly
so right.
Banks, healthcare, insurance, where regulations are there, it's much easier because at least the management knows that. But otherwise, how do you?
Unfortunately, yesterday the data protection got banged, right? So that was one stick which we could have used, right? But then largely what happens is, see, there are certain highly regulated and there are certain which is, mediumly regulated, right? Like if you look at edutech, right? Obviously, edutech is not very highly regulated in India, but there is an IT Act which talks about protection of PII data.
And also maybe recent certain guidelines also.
Right, and certain guidelines has come in, and then obviously there is some sense of, people now are conscious that, largely, and also the brand reputation is important for the organization, right? So that's one. And secondly, that when you operate in multiple countries, the other countries have stricter regulations. Like we operate in 25 plus countries. So obviously there is COPA compliance in the US, then there is GDPR in the UK, there is PDP, then LGBT in Brazil. So there are multiple countries where you need to be compliant of. But then largely, from a management perspective, you want your tech and engineering teams as well as, your overall org to be resilient, right, against any cyber attack, right? So obviously you will get a bad reputation in the media. And then obviously now the certains would come hard at you in case if it gets to the headlines, right? True. So obviously that's there. And the overall company needs to be well protected. I'm talking mainly from the startup world, right? And then organizations also understand the corporate espionage, right? Where data is the new oil, right? I mean, everybody wants data, right? Your competitor could really seize a lot of data in case, you don't have the right protection as well, which includes PII, your customer data, your databases, right? I mean, it's very easy because the customer acquisition cost is very high, right? And if you get all of that at one place where it's easily leaked out, then, so all of these are some of the reasons why, the managements are willing to pour in a little bit budget, right? I mean, not as compared to the regulated ones, but they do.
Great thoughts. So Yash, I have a specific question to you, like, because you come from a typical heavy engineering, I can say, and you are from the engineering side. Most of the time, engineering guys don't like security guys, like they feel that security is an impediment, right? Especially for the innovation, for moving faster. I'm sorry, but I'm just, it's not specifically. How do you see in that, how do you work together with?
All right. I think I also missed adding a little bit more about myself in the first one. So I'm Yash, I head the engineering, security and data teams at Zepto. And I think Zepto is we are in the 10-minute grocery delivery company. And I think we, as part of our footprint, we have a lot of things. So we have of course, we are digitally native, we are fully on the cloud. But we also have a lot of devices. For example, a lot of our, we call them Zeptons, are the people who actually come and deliver the order. All of them use their own handheld devices as well. So there's a lot of focus on, there's a lot of risk of security, etc. And there's a lot of focus that as a company we do on security. And I think I also just wanted to add a little bit on this. I think things have improved a lot from when I was like early in the career. Like a lot of questions, a lot of companies, a lot of leaders, especially the non-tech leaders, would actually ask questions on why is security important, etc. I think a large part of it has been on brand building, and I think given during the pandemic there were a lot of leaks, etc. that happened, and I think now there's a lot more awareness. So I think the question is not as much on whether we need the security or not. I think a lot of that has already like, I think it's fairly well institutionalized amongst all the leadership. This I'm talking about in industry in general, right? Yeah, so I think now coming back to that question, in fact, I do not see, in fact, I come from, I've been a software developer all my life, so I think I do feel that if you're a strong software developer, you do realize the importance of security. I think sometimes it's just a matter of maybe we've not evangelized about security enough. But I do feel that security is something that has to be built from the grassroots level, right?
Absolutely.
So especially if you have an engineer who's actually working on PII data, then this person needs to be aware of how he's storing it, he has to ensure that the phone number is not stored clear text in the database. He has to ensure that he's doing encryption, and a lot of that can only happen if you've evangelized and if you've talked about the importance of security. And I think so and only then you can ensure that all the software that you're building, all the changes you're doing, all the change management that's happening is happening in a secure manner. What I also have as a part of my teams is that when we are trying to launch features, there's a security review that happens where we actually go over some of these features, and mostly what I've noticed is now, because there's enough evangelization, that a lot of those things are already taken care of. But of course, I know on one of my previous stints, I actually put my foot down saying that this feature cannot go live until this particular thing is not taken care of. And although that does impede the release, so
Absolutely.
to make it to that point, but I think security is something which you can't compromise on at all. I think while at that point of time, people may feel that they were ready to go live today, but now it's not going live. But I think as long as you have the right processes in place, as long as you're doing enough evangelization, I don't think it's a problem anymore. I think most developers and most IT professionals understand the importance of security, and they will try to build it as a part of their solutioning.
Great. So Navaneethan, taking the discussion forward, I think what I just said, the shift left, what we talk about, the culture of shift left, is it really happening or?
No, really love to hear from Yash, in terms of unless the security checks are not clear, where we are not moving towards the deployment. It is amazing, the input. That's what most of the CISO is trying to do that. That's the way the clash starts, right? Because of course engineering team also might be under pressure, right? Really, they cannot do it the way we wanted. There is a pressure from the product team. Because all the product it comes as yesterday I wanted to release. It's a market pressure, as well as there is a requirement from the board and the things also. But there will be a little bit on the setback where they cannot meet on time, and then they may not have a time for the security. So they have to roll back, and let's roll back. Then over the night we can ensure that the security is taken care or not. That's what usually it goes. So if you take the shift left, it comes, so then it is amazing. because now most of the the engineering as well as the CEO is well recognized really before launching the product. Not only after launching. Before launching the product, like where we want to ensure the threat modeling. Like what are the component where we built it is secure enough, and second one is they want to do it on the source code level also. It's not only as applications. What are the code it is built? It does not have any other pirated stuff, and then code does not have any other hard-coded passwords. Code does not have any other inbuilt vulnerability based on the library what they have. And moreover, that process is started. Only thing is consuming the security time is a matter. Like what's the time frame it is required, how we want to move ahead. That's play a very significant role from the end to end. And very significant point is from security standpoint. Of course, Sanil has mentioned like since data privacy bill is revoked, and of course there's something new they are working out. That is a stick, right? As Satish also mentioned, like if you have a regulatory like NSE, BSE, and CDSL, NSCL, and SEBI, and then RBI, if there's not a regulated entity, how we are going to drive the security and then in terms of the data privacy. So now that is the one, it's a driving business, right? If you take this overall, the leaders overall here, really they are very much concerned about their data. Not only the password, right? I mean, really we are very much concerned about their email ID and then mobile number and what has been tracked, like where they are, what they bought it, what they wish, and then what they have done it from the end to end, right? That's people are really concerned about it. It may not be the organization, but people are really concerned about it. That's the one, it's driving the business. If let us take, it's not a regulated entity. If there is a data leakage, are they getting the customers? Definitely not the case, right? Because the people lose the trust. Now the most of the press, the business, it's going with the trust factor, performance. It's not like, what is the value additions we bring. So was that angle really which needs to be built in terms of the trust as well as the value additions from internally and then external standpoint.
Great. Devam, your thoughts on that, and typically how do you?
Yes, so definitely I agree. Like, yes, attitude towards security has been changed, but it's all about how we present the things. Like, it's all about risk. Whenever I talk about security, I start with the risk, I ends with the risk, and whenever, like, generally when I meet with CISO or the security people, the major challenge they face is like executives who are at the leader, who are at the top level. They don't understand the security things, and that is very common thing, like they are not understanding the security thing, and the leaders tell, like, we don't understand in which language these guys are talking. So we need to, as a top leader of security, we need to bridge the gap, and if we know how to do the risk management correctly, then it is very easy. For an example, I will give you an example. Like, I got some good financial approvals, and how I got it, like, it's very simple. In the Excel file, you just write down, rather than presenting entire of your risk register, you just mention 4 columns, okay? One is, what is risk? Then very risk description in the layman terminology, like which your leadership can understand. The third one is impact on the business. If that risk has occurred, like what will be the impact, how you get that in the financial term. You may do the survey, like maybe for one person it is 5 million, 10 million, 6.5. You don't need to put exact figure, but approximately figure, like if this content, like if I take our example, so content is our very important asset, and if content gets leaked, then what is the value? So I asked the head of content team, if this got leaked, what is the impact on the business? He gave some random figure. I put that, okay? And then if you want to protect that, then what is the measure, or what is the financial value of the control? So if you present this only 4 columns to your CEO or CFO, that is how I presented, how I have been doing this. And if you present this, like, okay, this is the risk, and if this content or XYZ, your critical asset got exposed, then this is the financial value, this is the financial loss we will have, this is the probability of the same. Otherwise, if we implement this control, which is this amount, then we can reduce this risk significantly. So you always go with this kind of very small, brief thing, and then present. And also we can talk about how we can enable the business with security. Like if you are going with any B2B deal or going with international businesses, then some of the compliances are mandatory. Even we are into AdTech, India do not have any such, as of till now, till certain comes in, we don't have any such mandate compliance requirement to be followed. But if we want to do the business outside, then it is mandatory for us to comply with GDPR and other compliance standard. Then also we need to have some standard compliance if we want to have B2B deal. So we present business things to the leadership, and when we are able to talk business with the leadership, when we are able to talk security in the business language, then I don't see any challenge there. 100% leadership will agree, because nobody is there to lose their business, or nobody is there to just give up their business because of some security incident.
Great,
it is
great.
how we communicate. Yeah.
Thanks Devam for your thoughts. I'm just conscious of time, so let's quickly listen from.
Sure. I think not taking security seriously is being pound foolish and penny wise. Absolutely. And I think I read this quote somewhere, which I believe is very true. The security is something the presence of which is never felt, and the absence of which is regretted. So a little bit of the approach that I have personally taken is that I don't think leadership is not security focused. They definitely want security, but they want security to be seamless. It should not be a bottleneck in your deployments or your releases. So the goal has, for me, the goal has always been to make security least, very low cost, and to make it very resilient. And the approach definitely shift left helps. Implement a proper DevSecOps pipeline in your organization. Have a secret scanning done before even you send your code to GitHub, because anything that goes online stays there forever. Even if you have any secrets uploaded at one time and you found them out and you remove them now, they can still be looked back by going to services such as Wayback URL and all. So ensure that you never put any sensitive information out there. Once you are done with your secret scanning, have a SAST and DAST done. And secondly, I think one point which I felt missing was what about cloud? How do you ensure that the security shifts left on the cloud? So this is something that every organization should start as an initiative, is building your infrastructure as code. Okay, so that nobody has to go and make changes on the console and make mistakes, because let's face it, humans are the weakest link. Cloud itself is not insecure. It's we who make it insecure by configuring it or opening ports or configuring insecure security groups for that matter. So ensure that you have infrastructure as code. Use any platform. If you use on AWS, use CloudFormation. If you want to use Terraform, go ahead with it. But ensure you have a proper scanning done of this code and have a basic template ready so that your infrastructure by default is secure.
Great thoughts, Vanshit.
Yeah.
So let's now go to Amit for the final solution, right? Because what 𝗘𝗍𝗿 is doing, especially in the innovation space, and what is your advice for our audience or for the organizations, how to secure data, counter against ransomware?
Absolutely. So before I delve into the innovation part, let me just quickly share what experience has been, right? So the day the big bomb explodes, what happens, right? Chaos, right? Confusion. What do we do? What is important? What has been impacted, right? So it can take anywhere from a few hours to days to weeks for the customers to really even put a finger down, hey, this is what has been impacted, and now let's build in a strategy to really, counter that. Based on what we have seen, we essentially have a ransomware recovery team as part of our professional services, and they have been helping customers who have been attacked by ransomware. So this is all learnings based on that. Shift left, like you referred to, many of the panelists referred to, for us is a very inspirational thing, which leveraging back to the time chronicles of the ransomware process activity in a real estate. Shift left means for us early detection, monitoring during the time before it is about to launch an attack, right? That's very crucial. So towards that space, we have anomaly-based, machine learning-based algorithms to really tell you suspicious activity happening on your assets, right? Through all the data that we have been monitoring on your assets, even those are data points based on which we can point out MIME type-based anomalies. For example, a ransomware encrypts your data. Let's say, put it simply, let's say it was a doc file, right? We can see that when we are backing up, the content indicates it's a doc, but the extension is EEC, something fishy, right? So those are the things we have been working on. But a key innovation we have brought out very recently is an absolutely brand new product called ThreatWise. And it's on a fundamentally different level, which is, it is luring ransomware towards it. So the whole concept is based on deception, cyber deception. Let's say you have a crown jewel. It is based on the crown jewel analysis that Vanshit was referring to. Usually the concept goes that 2% of your assets contribute to almost 70–80% of your business value. Absolutely. Based on that, the idea is to put your most of your effort in really protecting them. So we deploy fakes, decoys, surround them, and ensure that ransomware, the malwares, are lured into these decoys, which are extremely sensitive, and they are not polluting your traffic at the same time, right? And immediately alert you that there's something going on for sure, right? Low false positives. Guess what? False positives are a big botheration to the users, to the ID team, right? You cannot help them chasing down those false positives all the time. So these innovations are really the benchmark of, an indicative of what our thought process as Commvault is these days.
Excellent. So when you said decoys, does it mean deception?
Yes. So there are types of assets ranging from Linux servers, Windows servers, email servers, networking equipment that our decoys can imitate, right? They can be adapted, their personas can be adapted to really imitate and make sure that they fit into environment. And let's take a very simple example. An AD server surrounded by 2 decoys. You bring down the possibility of ransomware reaching first to your real AD server by 33%. Instead of 100%, it is bound to find out your AD server, right? So if we have decoys, it reaches one of our decoys. You're in the field of risk management. It's kind of widely accepted as a very reasonable strategy.
Any other advice?
Plan, partner, and identify the experts and rely on them to really help you out, right? So maybe as of our perception, it's really about evolving to the SaaS model, because there you get the peace of mind and the enough time for your line of business operations while the experts tackle the security.
Excellent, excellent. Great thoughts. I don't have much time to go back once again, but maybe quick, each one of you, quick 5 seconds, closing comments, thoughts. Then we can go back to the audience for any specific questions.
I think we just have a minute, right? So we can go back, probably take a couple of minutes.
Let's
for
go
the
to audience, maybe any audience
throw
questions.
some questions.
I think that will be much more, let's make it interactive. If it
Hey, hi, my name is Sanil. I just generally go back to the period when I was part of the audit and when we talk about data being on cloud. From compliance perspective, every CSP is certified, registered, practice, NDA signed, everything. But the auditor question was like, you're not on dedicated host. It is still other's computer. Your data is shared with somebody else. What if there is another host of another company, another application, which is infected? And as you're sharing the hardware or the host that is being virtualized, so how do you protect their ware? Do you know your partners, how they are protecting it?
So I can answer again on behalf of the leading cloud providers. I'm sure because all public cloud providers have their own mechanisms to ensure to give the right assurance.
There was a rumor it has already happened. I don't have a justification.
No, absolutely. So in fact, customers who are very much paranoid on that aspect, they can go for private cloud. See, cloud need not be always public cloud, honestly. So that's the reason why I think my co-panelist will agree.
I think what he's talking about is if you are sharing the data with a third party.
No, he's talking cloud environment is a multi-tenant environment. I think that's the point, right? Multiple.
Exactly. That was my concern. Yeah. I mean, that question came from an renowned auditor itself, saying that, have you visualized these things? Saying that as a bare metal, you're sharing it, okay, and there is another company who is hosted, and he could not be, probably he's not very secured, and he may have loose ends, many loose ends.
So the company may not be secured, but the underlying architecture, see the hypervisor, see today most of the leading hypervisors has this security built in. In fact, so that's the fundamental, the cloud model, right? If you look at the underlying, see, agree, absolutely, that can be true in your environment. So if your hypervisor is not secured, if you're not taking enough care of your hypervisor, absolutely the risk exists. Like your VM to VM attack is possible, it's all possible. But I'm sure that's where your leading cloud providers will have the enough assurance controls around.
So
that's where the SOC 2 report comes in. Absolutely, you have to go and look at it as please go and demand a SOC 2 report from any cloud provider. In fact, again, the same auditor who asked the question, they do tough audit. Without that, they don't give a SOC 2. I'm sure each one of
so
us
this
understand.
may be, I can take a small examples, right? I mean, it's like one of the bigger conversations where we are debating, because it's when everybody's giving to the, a cloud data center itself, where we have a shared data centers, not 10 years back. Now it's not in data centers, right? In terms of the hypervisor itself, where we have a multi-tenancy, really we are not sure how the VLAN, how the connectivity is be taken care. I mean, it might be a competitor, right? The Zepto competitor might be in the same, the nodes and the same things like how it has been taken care. It's a two-way, right? Once we get into the flight, once we get into the aircraft, really we don't check the pilot qualifications, right? Think about it. It's like our life. We are flying on this 30,000, feet above on that. We don't check on this, like go and check ID card, where you taken the training, how many hours you have flew from, the respective regions. We believe on this aircraft. Who is running this firm? I mean, like they would have qualified, the pilot they would have taken, right? So that aspects, if you take this as CSP, they are going with all the PCDSS, ISO 27001. Just we believe on those auditing firm. I mean, who are all doing in-depth of maybe SOC type 1, type 2, and then all the controls, and then who are doing this hardware check of, this multi-tenancy segregations, and then how the ZTA, right, zero trust configuration it has been taken care. So that's why very strongly we go there. That is the first level of check where we do that. And second level of check is, before getting into that, our environment, just where we do the thorough check from our side. You can request it. Any specific vendor you want to have any physical visit, or you want to have in either, specific, of course they may charge it for that, but you can request them and then you can move ahead. On top of that, what are the compliance reports, so, they have given over there. So that's the way it's evolved. Like some places where we have to go on the trust and then confidence.
I think coming back to what
I just wanted to add one more. Sorry, I just wanted to add one more point. I think largely agreeing with. I think this is where the shared ownership comes in. So the shared ownership of the cloud provider is to ensure that the hypervisor and that machine is actually abstracted away, and there's no security risks associated with that. In addition to that, if you do feel that maybe this is a risk and you don't want to take this kind of, so like security is all about mitigating risk, right? So no one will say for 100% sure that that there cannot be a way by which someone can bypass the hypervisor and reach into you. But if you feel if you feel that that's a risk that you do not want to take, even it's a very small amount of risk, then you can always go for reserve instances. You can always go for always go for a dedicated instance where it's only your own code base. Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's why still there are organizations who are paranoid. They go for private cloud. They don't go for public cloud. So yeah, options are there.
I would like to quickly, I think you have struck a very vital chord. Everyone is willing to comment on it. So from a data protection point of view, we support multi-tenancy, right? I mean, not in the context of the cloud, but as our software. And so we essentially pick up data from your on-prem or cloud entities and deposit it in the container or the object storage provided by the cloud vendors. And so you have kind of, one-to-one mapping in that context. However, there are certain touch points where if you need some post-protection analysis, right? There's certain post-processing that can happen if you so desire. So there, some of our compute resources come, access the data, and so that's one touch point. But we do our due diligence. But if you are, you have that concern, we let you bring your own machine, BYOD, right? So bring your own device, you be in full control, or we are willing to serve you an independent device, and accordingly, that gets factored into the plan aspects, right? So things are possible, but that need not necessarily desist you, right, from adopting cloud as a futuristic destination.
And yeah, I like to add one point, like a fellow panelist spoke about technical controls, but there are also other types of control like administrative controls. So in my previous organization, we used to have PHI data. And when we host on the cloud, we have something called BAA, which is Business Associate Agreement. So whenever we sign the BAA, it is mentioned if something happen at their side, then they are liable to pay the PHI, whatever is leaked, whatever is the gap or whatever is the penalty, they are liable liable for that. So apart from the technical controls, we should also think about administrative controls, like if the data is so critical, we are into such kind of sector where we cannot afford to lose that data, then those kind of agreements, administrative controls are available. So when I face the audits, such audits, and they ask similar kind of question, then we showcase them, okay, these are the, like if it is on AWS, we have AWS SOC 2 report. Again, if auditor wants more justification, we showcase them our BAA agreement, in which it is clearly mentioned, if something happens from the AWS side, then AWS is liable for that, not we are the liable. So these kind of controls also we can implement.
Great, let's go to any other questions?
Hi, my name is Pramod, and when we are doing a business with any CSP, right, and as one of you said that we do have leverage of getting a vulnerability report from the cloud service provider. So when we do get that, if at all we as a company, right, we have our own standards where the resolution date or the risk level does not meet with the cloud security provider, cloud service provider. So how do we handle that? So there's a conflict of interest when the risk level, right, with the risk level. So the risk level for us, for a particular vulnerability might be high than for that of a CSP, right? How do we ensure there's no conflict there?
No, see, I don't agree with that, because cloud security runs on shared responsibility model, as one of them said. There's some two parts. Security of the cloud, security in the cloud. So predominantly the underlying thing is what the CSPs are taking care, and I don't think they say they give you the broader assurance, but they don't share any reports and all with you. But rest of the part, I think it's you who have to take care, and I don't think.
Yeah, maybe on top of that Satish input, it's a two-way, right? Maybe from my principal standpoint, we have a compliance views and then hacker views. The compliance views, so what are the report they submit? You have a checklist, yes, done. Let's onboard, that's a one. But you should have a hacker mindset, hacker view, saying that what are the integrations you are doing with your applications or your infrastructure. You should be able to penetrate and then get things done with your own team. You know, in terms of integrations or the data flow, or in terms of the storage, or in terms of the vulnerability. It's maybe the applications, or it's maybe the network. What level of integrations they are penetrating to your network, it's a matter, right? Not just the API. Maybe on top of this, what's the level are they connecting also, it's a matter. So most of the CISOs and CEOs, they will have both the mindsets, right? One is on the compliance, hacker mindset. The hacker mindset is a fundamental which will help you to keep your organization healthy and wealthy to move ahead.
It's just to add a simple example, if you're talking of a specific standard example, PCI DSS, like see, while predominantly the CSP may say we are a PCI DSS compliant, but that is because the application is yours. It's your application. Imagine if your application doesn't support TLS. Now the cloud provider doesn't do anything, because end of the day your QSA is looking at your application and the requirements of all the PCI DSS standard. Your application qualifies, or is it compliant? And underlying infrastructure is what the CSP gives assurance from their angle, the SOC 1 report, SOC 2, and even the PCI DSS. But I think that's how the whole industry runs. Maybe Sanil or anyone else you want to add? I hope we answered
the other thing which I also want to add is, for instance, that's also one of the reasons why there's private cloud and there is on-prem hosting, right? So there may be some applications which are very, very sensitive. For example, if you are trying to store maybe some sort of medical data or some very, very sensitive data, then maybe you do want to keep stuff on-prem. So I think it depends on the use case basis. But generally, I think I would say majority of the applications, etc., the security which is provided by CST is actually quite good enough for you to be comfortable with.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's completely a shared model, right? And each service providers will have clearly identified what are their responsibility. If you read, AWS or GCP's cloud shared model, they will clearly identify what are their responsibility, what's their risk appetite, and all of that. And somebody rightly said that you can bake that into contract as well.
Absolutely. And still, as Yash said, if it's still sensitive, I think go for a private cloud. But today, thanks to, we have solutions like cloud in the box. In fact, you get a box where you can put it in data center. It's as good as cloud it delivers cloud. In fact, without naming solution.
What Navaneet said, right? You fly your own jet, maybe, if you have that much money.
There's some moreover where you want to optimize, right? Where you can go on the auto rickshaw or you can go on the Benz. You know, what is your affordability and then what you want to get it. That's what it is a cloud. They provide everything, but what's the level of, as I rightly told, just if you want to have it the private cloud affordability, we can go ahead. So, but what's the level? Some places we have to optimize, right? What I need, what they provide, whether it is fulfilling. It's like how you are happy with our own life, right? The same way. You know, whether it's I have, 100 crores in my bank account, then only I'm happy. That's not a way, right? If it's 1 rupee also, it's a happy comes from within us. The same way, where some places we have to fulfill, as rightly as mentioned, we have to ensure the control enforcement, how it is effective. If you verify that things, I think we are in the good way.
Great. Are we in? Yeah, last
Hey guys,
question.
this is actually for everyone. So more towards the second discussion point, which is around alignment at the management level and budgeting, right? So I completely am in tune with asset-wise risk assessment and risk commensurate investment or protection or locks, right? One thing that in my limited experience I don't have a good feel for, and I'd love for all of you guys to share, is how do you look at what is the total amount you can invest in security, right? Because is it something that you look at the top line is something, because one is, you have to meet certain regulatory or compliance needs, but you can do a very basic job and still meet those needs, right? And that's not what anyone gets up and goes to work for. So in every single asset and risk class, there is a 1 rupee to 100 crore investment that I can make, and determining what should be the investment made, right? I don't know if there are any industry benchmarks or practices that are there, like, like in pharma, 5-10% of revenue goes into R&D for new drugs. So is there a kind of metric that any of you are aware of, or what do you guys personally practice?
That's a very fair topic of mine. There's a FAIR model. In fact, it's called
exactly. What's
the risk
FAIR?
quantification model and all. There's an institute called FAIR Institute who has been working very hard on risk quantification. Risk quantification has been a many years challenge.
It is more subjective than
predominantly we call high risk. Now, what do you mean by high? What high for Sanil may be low for Yash. So the definition of high. But yeah, there are models, there are standards, and it's evolving. I'm not saying there's no single mantra, and fundamentally we keep debating about we call ROCE, return on security investment. How much money we have put and what is the value, and most of the things are based on risk appetite also. Risk appetite of your organization, how much risk are they willing to take? A startup can take more risk, whereas a established company is much more risk averse. So I think it's all. There's no single mantra. If you ask me a simple budget wise, the CIO has the budget, and that's typically 10-15% of your overall revenue is what fundamentally I think IT budget, and from there you get a portion of security budget. That's how the industry works. And finally, it's all about the partnership. And again, a lot of things are based on drivers basically. What is the driving factor? I think all that. But there's no single digit. I don't think anyone can put a single number to the security budget. It's all based on various factors, and maybe we can take it offline. I can. There are a lot of studies from Gartner, and there's a lot of information available out there. Maybe you want to add, someone would like to add.
Just a quick point to add to that is security doesn't work in a way like one size fits all. So
Absolutely.
As your infrastructure evolves, your security also has to evolve. The kind of services that you're going to use, the kind of way that you are scaling up your infrastructure, that completely relies on what security measures you need to take. And secondly, I don't think putting in money is an answer to having a top-notch security. There are plenty of and plethora of open source solutions also available. If configured perfectly and correctly, they can actually give you the way a proper paid tool will work. And it's up to you that what kind of level of effort you want to do. I've seen organizations building their own security tools also, and some organizations taking an approach to let's just buy overbuild. So it's completely depends upon how much resources and kind of investment you want to make on it. But then yes, there are options always available. And from my experience, I think open source tools work really well, especially for security.
If you have good people around you, right? If you have good people around you.
Yeah, but you have to understand how the tool works.
So
just downloading the tool or just buying the tool is not going to work. You have to understand the underlying logic of that tool and then probably configure it.
Absolutely. Great. With that, I think, yeah.
So basically, from an investment strategy standpoint, right? Either one is, rightly said, is about 5% of the overall IT budget, including the headcount. That's one. B, typically I'll tell you, I mean, that's what on papers, but practically how would happen is, depending upon which industry you are in. Let's take e-commerce, right? We'll take benchmark at the bigger ones like the Flipkarts. They have gone through the journey, which means they might have burned their hands, had a lot of security issues, and they might have put those controls over a journey of 10 years, right? So let's say there are 10 people, there's a SOC, there is this, that, whatever. So the next company who is probably closer 60-70%, they have, okay, this is the guy, he's burned his hand or whatever, they have learned over that journey, and this, for example, they have CSPM or probably a SOC. So you have your industry peers is what the competitor would look at, boss. Competitor ke paas kya hai, right? So that's how typically the industry would look.
And the next lighter note is you get a budget when you are hit by some ransomware attack, or I think you should pray for data breach.
Yeah, exactly. Or wait for data.
You should wait or pray for data breach. If data breach, lighter note, one of the largest IT company, the security budget was doubled because of the recent ransomware.
But you'll pray that the data breach has happened before you joined, right? So probably you got a job.
Yes.
The last bit I could add from personal experiences, a lot of customers do the CapEx. They purchase something fancy, forget it. Absolutely useless, right? You stick with something simple that you understand, but keep it up to date, right? And operationalize it to the best. Simple, right? That will take you a long way in the worst cases.
It's more of the new toy, right? I mean, once you get the new toy, the kids how will play. You know, play for 1 hour. Then if you show the new other toy, no, it will leave. Just even though it is a 1 hour old, they will leave. That's a 1 hour old one. Then look for the new one. Usually this IT and then cyber may not be the guy who is the new toy, right? On the toy, what is the effectiveness where we can bring it? What is the ROI we can bring it? You know, maybe on the lighter note, like really may not require to wait till the ransomware. Just show the directions, like if you don't have the firewall, or if you don't have this WAF assessment, or if you don't have a API security, or if you don't have a dark web penetration, what is the consequence? Because of the consequence, what is the number? What is the reputations? What is the loss of, maybe you see you have a 3x plan. Then if you don't have this other things, you may go minus 3x, what we are going to add it, right? If you make that impact, I think, you'll get, as well as, usually we don't go with the number, like, we have to make it a revenue of 5%, 2%, it won't work. Go with your requirement. This is what it is, I need it. Then cutting or maybe adding, that's their responsibility. But you have projected like what is exactly. But don't hesitate, like this is a little bit beyond the budget and all the things and all that will overshoot. Let's go with gap assessment, what it is required. What is the, as I rightly told, what is the open source does, what is the commercial does, what are the other customizations we can do then, and then from there, we can take it forward. I believe Diksha keep looking us. It was an amazing conversation.
So let's give a big round for our panelists for great insights.